Hello, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us for Housing is a Human Right, the newest webinar with the Charter for Compassion. My name is Felipe, and I am part of the Charter staff family. And today we have our good friend Nate Schluter with Eden Village, and also the lovely Susan Soleil with our staff family as well. Susan, would you like to say anything?
Just hello, so excited to be here. Thank you, Nate, for joining us.
Absolutely, yeah. Glad to be here.
Yeah, yes. We're very excited to hear from all the different projects that Eden Village has around the country in the United States. I just wanted to let you know a couple little logistics things. This webinar will be posted in our YouTube channel, and will also be premiered on Facebook as a Facebook premiere on Friday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So you can watch it and do live chat there if you want to. As you already know, we'll have Nate presenting about his project, and then we'll finish with a Q&A where we encourage everyone to put their questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll make sure to go through all of them during the time at the end of this webinar. We're grateful for you to be here. We hope that this is inspiring to you and to the compassion communities that you belong to, and maybe create a project similar to what we've been seeing for the past 5 weeks. Also, next week, we'll have María Fernanda with Techo in Nuevo León, Mexico. And that should be a very exciting presentation. Myself and my sister as well, we both did Techo when we were in high school back in Chile. So it's a very exciting project to do. So I don't know if there's anything else that we need to say, Susan. If not, I think that we'll leave the time to you, Nate, to introduce us to your project and everything that you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. The name of our project is Eden Village, and it's a model for permanent supportive housing in really pocket-style neighborhoods, a scatter site approach that is really built on relationships. And the reason it's built on relationships is the name of our nonprofit is The Gathering Tree. And The Gathering Tree started in 2010 by some local individuals and was founded by Dr. David and Linda Brown, who still participate in Eden Village and the other projects that we have going on, and really are the founders. But they started off with a drop-in center to build relationships with people that were homeless in our city, just a safe place that you could hang out 5 nights a week from 5 to 8 p.m. And through those relationships, from 2010 to 2016, Linda Brown wanted to build homes. She thought that it was a tragedy that our homeless brothers and sisters, after we locked up the building, we were getting in our cars and going to our homes, and they were walking down the railroad tracks to hidden campsites. And we thought, surely, knowing people for the last 6 years, there was something better for them, something better that we could do. So in 2016, David and Linda Brown and my wife Kelby and I met and started talking about the idea of developing a community, permanent supportive housing for people in our community that were chronically homeless. And that means that they've been on the streets for a year or longer, or multiple long-term episodes of homelessness over the last 3 years, and typically are single, unaccompanied with a disabling condition. So that's what Eden Village really does. And then we opened our first Eden Village in Springfield in 2018. And within 6 months, reduced our city's homeless population by 14%. And then in 2020, our waiting list for Eden Village topped 130 people right before COVID hit. And now it's over 220 people that have filled out applications. And so we developed a solar-powered teardrop campground called Revive 66, just as a safe place to sleep at night. And then we opened our second village in Springfield, Missouri in last November. And so about a year ago, we had our grand opening, and we housed 55 people in permanent supportive neighborhood cottages, and then about another 60 at the campground on any given night. And so we have a temporary model and then also the permanent supportive housing model. I want to share my screen and kind of show you guys how it works and how we've licensed our model and duplicated it in 10 other cities and 9 other states that are bringing Eden Villages to their community. We think it's the most easily duplicated and replicated model out there to make a serious impact in a short amount of time and really help people out, offer them dignity and compassion. So this is who we are, Eden Village, and our mission is to build relationships and communities for our homeless friends. And it's intentional that it's relationships first. We want to get to know people. That's why our villages are small, 50 or less homes throughout the country. That's our model, is we want to get to know people. We don't want to identify people by the number of their house or their address, but rather by their name, their story, the color of their home, or maybe the donor that donated the home and what the home's name is. Every home has a name, but it's very relational. These are people that we interact with every day, and we are able to, and we have a community center where people can come in and out. So right now I'm in the community center, and there's a multitude of activities that happen at any given time here, but they're all optional. And it's important to understand when we're dealing with the homeless population that we need to ask people to live by the same rules that you and I live by and nothing else. So sometimes in America, with people in poverty, we address that in a variety of ways. And 2 of those ways, we don't believe at Eden Village work. The first way that sometimes we try to help people get into housing is we put them in places that you and I wouldn't live. And then we're so disappointed when they're unsuccessful, but we put them in a place, in a project housing development or something that we wouldn't even let our kids live for their first apartment out of college. So we wanted people to live in homes that were as beautiful as our homes, just smaller and affordable for us to build for them. And then, and that's really the second thing that leads into the second thing that we do, and that's that we ask people in poverty to do things that you and I don't have to do. And so my mortgage company doesn't require me to stroke my house payment check and go to 2 Bible studies in an AA meeting every week, right? And so our community center is full of the amenities that we think people need to heal and to be settled. But it's all optional. You can take advantage of that whenever you want to. You can come to those meetings as you want. The things that you need to do to live here is you need to pay rent. It's $325 a month, utilities included, no deposit. And you need to agree to live in a crime and drug-free community, which means you don't bring crimes or drugs onto the properties that we own and operate. And then this is our vision, and our vision is for cities where no one sleeps outside. If you guys could imagine what a city where no one sleeps outside would mean for the medical system, the criminal justice system, but more importantly, the individuals that are currently sleeping outside and the situations that they encounter. We think that our friends on the street are far more likely to be victimized and are far more vulnerable than the rest of our population. And so these are 2 pictures of our community centers. This is the one on the top left is our first village community center. And then this is our second village community center. And we have other community centers and other villages being built around the country. And we're getting ready to start our 3rd village in the next 30 days in Springfield that'll house between 24 and 30 more people that are currently chronically homeless. So we're really excited about that. I want to show you guys a couple pictures of what the homes look like. And hopefully you'll be able to say, just by seeing this, what people say when they walk in these homes. And what they say, these are what they look like from the outside. And then this is how they look in the inside. And the number one response to walking into this home by donors and volunteers and people in the community is, I could live here. This home isn't staged, somebody lives here. It's fully furnished, just like this, every home is. Vinyl or leather, recliners or love seats, completely decorated. If you don't like the decorations, you can bring them back and give them back to us. All of your plates and utensils and everything you need to get you started. Most people move into Eden Village with a backpack and nothing else. And from day one, from walking in the home, from getting their key, they immediately have something that is just as great as our homes. And these are kind of some architectural drawings of the homes. All of our units right now are manufactured and delivered to us on semi trucks. And so it's pretty neat to see a home come in completely painted with all the appliances, and it makes our building process really quick. We built the first Eden Village from first dollar raised to first resident moved in 2 years. We built the second Eden Village from first dollar raised for it to first resident moved in 11 months. And so we're seeing that we can come up with a construction style that meets local zoning in a variety of different cities and a variety of different zoning applications, and really make our response rapid. And it's important that there's some urgency when we're addressing a situation like homelessness. This is the Revive 66 campground. These are some of the solar powered teardrop units. This isn't a solution to ending homelessness. This is the beginning of being able to get a good night's sleep while we're working as hard as we possibly can to build as many villages as we can in our city. And so each unit is 4x8 with a twin size mattress. And this is not the hangout place all day long. This is where you go to be safe and get a good night's sleep. So this is open from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and it's all about getting good rest. And so I wanted to show you how the two models work together, and a move-in of somebody, because at the end of the day, some of us may never have the privilege that I have over and over and over again over the years of seeing somebody move into a home. So I wanted to show you a video of that, of how it works, of somebody that was staying at the campground and the next day walked into their forever home. Her name's Jean. Hopefully the video will play and we'll start it.
So we have Eden Village, which builds neighborhoods and permanent housing for people that were homeless. And then we have Revive 66 that meets people right where they're at on the streets and provides a safe night's sleep. So our vision is for a city where no one sleeps outside. So Jean's at the campground tonight, and this will be her last night being homeless. So she's staying here tonight, so she'll be safe and we'll know where she's at. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, she's moving into her forever home at Eden Village 2. You know, the good thing about Eden Village is there's a lot of neighbors and people you can meet and front porches, and, you know, there's a lot of community activities. So there's a good group of people over there. You'll probably make some really great friends. Moving in.
Oh, hi.
That's my neighbor.
How are you? That's Jeffrey.
Hey, I'm your
Patricia.
neighbor. If you ever need anything, I am right there across the street.
Okay.
Nice to meet you. You are?
Jean.
Jean, good to meet you. Welcome.
Welcome. Aw, sweet girl. God bless you. You're home. You're home. Yeah.
Dad, you with me? I made it. I made it.
Welcome home.
So we have Eden Village, which builds neighborhoods.
So some of the things that always stick out to me about that video is Jeffrey, when we're walking up the path, runs up to her and he says, "Hi, my name's Jeffrey. I'm your neighbor." And he's been at Eden Village in a home for 3 months. And he could have never identified and called himself a neighbor living in a hidden camp 90 days earlier. And then Jean looks up as she's going through that door and says, "Dad, are you with me?" And Dad was what she called her husband, who died during COVID, homeless in our city. And she's saying, "We're home, we're coming home together." And then obviously that she made it, like she was one of the lucky ones. And it shouldn't have to be that way. People should be able to find ultra affordable housing in our country. Our average resident gets between $600 and $800 a month, and affordable housing isn't a solution for them. They need something far more affordable than the things that we're calling affordable right now. And an amazing thing happens here, that people, once they're settled at Eden Village and they're secure and they know that they have a permanent place, not temporary, not transitional, but a permanent place to call home. The number one reason that somebody would move out or leave Eden Village is that they pass away in their home. People move in here with serious medical conditions. At any given time, we have at least 4 people that we know of with terminal health conditions. And to live out the rest of your life in a home is the bittersweet success of permanent supportive housing. It's the bittersweet success of treating people with compassion and dignity. But when people get settled, they're able to care for the world around them. So this top picture on the left are residents. We adopt the streets next to Eden Village. We participate with neighborhood associations all around our property. Most of them have their meetings in our community centers. But this is them doing the quarterly trash cleanup for a mile of road leading up to Eden Village, and taking care of the property, taking care of Eden Village, but taking care of our neighborhood and then our city. And so we're trying to help people be settled and live out a lifestyle of caring for others. And sometimes that can be hard, because to keep people alive on the streets, a bunch of great organizations have had to give out stuff, food, tents, sleeping bags, and typically people might move in very entitled. And part of our role is to change that and talk about being a good neighbor, right? We just want people to explore the idea and work towards being a good neighbor when they move in. We love it if people love their neighbor as themselves, but I'm not sure I completely understand that as much as I might want to attain that, right? But the neighborhood is very, very tight knit here. People know each other. They know each other by name. And part of that's by design. All the homes have a front porch. It's really a throwback to the types of neighborhoods that were built in America in the 1930s and 40s that our grandparents and parents were talking about, where they hung out with front porches and pre-air conditioning, and they knew their neighbors and their neighborhoods were safe. And so ours are gated and safe, and people hang out on the porch and they see people walking by and they get to know people, and those relationships ultimately heal some of the reasons that maybe somebody and some of their struggles from homelessness. We believe that the single greatest cause of homelessness is the loss of family. It's not mental illness, a history in the criminal justice system, a struggle with employment, any of the things that we might assume of the person holding the cardboard sign. We know people, and we're related to people probably that struggle with those same things. But as a family, we form a safety net and help them out. And we can't be family with people that we're not family with, but we can be community, and community and relationships can form some of that same safety net in the context of Eden Village that prevents somebody from going back onto the streets. And so when we see somebody struggle, we have hard conversations, we tell them we love them, and we try to get them the help that they need so that they can stay at the village and live successfully here. So we found out a few things over the years since our first resident moved in 2018. We've done a part of what will be published next year, but this is the beginnings of a 5-year anthropology study with the local university that the residents can voluntarily participate in. And so every resident has participated. They get paid when they participate by the university. And so these are some things that we know. We know that residents typically love their homes. Everyone knows everyone. It's not the creation of a new community. They knew each other on the streets. We're just rearranging that in the context of permanent homes. Springfield has plenty of food and clothes, but not enough housing. Our poverty rate in our city is over 25%. Some of the factors of homelessness have been abuse, foster care system, the death of a loved one like Jean, so drugs, alcohol, and mental health issues. 80% of our residents, their primary disability is a mental health condition. So that's a pretty typical population. They were asked what 5 words they associated with homelessness, and we've arranged those in a word cloud where the bigger the letters, the more often it was said. And so these are some of the words that they associated. Lonely, cold, hungry, scared, dangerous. And then we asked them the 5 words, or what 1 word would you associate with your home? And TV is the biggest. Love, bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, beautiful, awesome. Totally different words than what they were associating with living on the streets. This study was done at Eden Village 1, just one of our properties, and will continue until mid-2023. But today we know that there's 30 residents here. Their average age is 51 years old. The youngest resident is 26, and the oldest is 72. So a variety of ages, a very diverse population. 19 males, 10 females, 1 non-binary resident, 23 white residents, and 7 Black residents in a city with a 4% minority population. That's where we live. Average amount of time at Eden Village is 561 nights. And the current residents, their nights living at Eden Village is over 27,000 nights since 2018. Our total nights of individuals housed at Eden Village are 39,679. That's because some people move out, they reunite with family, They get married or get a significant other and want to live somewhere different. They get a job, they go back to school, all kinds of great things happen. But they're free and to live here the rest of their lives. And when somebody moves in, that's what we always expect will happen. But sometimes the unexpected happens, and that's awesome. Anytime we have permanent housing in America, we're free to use it as a stepping stone to something different, or we can just stay there. And so they have those same options that you and I have. And then Eden Village, USA.org is our website. We're building Eden Villages in 10 other cities and 9 states. The way that we do that is we license that model for other people to bring Eden Village to their community. And what sets it apart from other models out there is that we don't rezone. We don't deal with angry neighborhood meetings. No, not in my backyard movement. We find a way to build what we want to build within existing zoning in every state and municipality that we bring in Eden Village to, which allows us to pull permits and complete our projects a lot quicker than some typical models for tiny homes and things like that. And I know that anytime we talk about homelessness, Eden Village, tiny homes, there's lots and lots of questions. And I would love to spend a little bit of time answering any questions that anyone might have.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nate, for that presentation. Great materials. Love the video. I think it brings a lot of feelings when you get to see people finally able to have a roof over their heads, and how important and beautiful and valuable that is to all of us to have a space where we can call home. So
Right.
thanks for that inspiration, and thank you everybody else for joining us right now. We have about 30 minutes to make questions, and we have already a couple questions that we would like to ask. And Susan, you're welcome to take over on this section.
All right, thank you. Wow, Nate, very powerful. Love that video of someone. I thought it was actually quite sweet that she struggled to get the key to unlock her door, because she hasn't had to do that for however long she was experiencing homelessness, right?
Well, and when you think about it, the only times that she had been inside in the last 5 years, she was either living in her car, or every once in a while, a great organization in town would get her and her husband, when he was alive, a hotel room. But a hotel room has that magnetic card, right? And you just swipe it. So having a key was, it's just been so long. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I loved that there was such a sweetness and a surprise, right? Like, this is mine. This is where I get to live. This is the bed I get to sleep in. This is the living room I get to stay in.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. Yeah, very touching. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Love your model. And you talked quite a bit about kind of affordability and how you keep the rents super low. And I'm wondering, but you had a flat rate, so it's not on a sliding scale based on what they make, or just this is what rent is?
It's not on a sliding scale. And the reason is that is us treating people in poverty different than we get treated, right? When we say no more than 30% of your income, whatever, that might be how our mortgage company determines if we can get finance for something. But when we go rent something, we know what we're walking into, and they don't. And I don't want anyone to get back on their feet and go get a full-time job and get off disability or do something great with their life and be worried that me, the man, is going to come and want to look at their pay stub, right? If they make more money and they have this ultra affordable rent, they just become a light for the rest of the community to go. But when I was renting a home and my mortgage company doesn't ask me for income updates every year, it's just not the way that our economic system works unless we're dealing with poverty. And it's the same as we don't make people do things to rent a place or to sleep somewhere, unless we're dealing with poverty, because we think as higher net worth individuals that the problem is something. And sometimes that something is something that we struggle with, and we know people in homes that struggle with. So in a way, we feel like that's kind of hypocrisy. And so we wanted it to be set. People know if I'm applying here, this is what I'm paying. I don't have to hide my income or anything like that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. That really helped. I appreciate that kind of the explanation to why this is what rent is.
Right.
So curiously, how are your residents in terms of meeting rent? Do you have a few fall behind? How do you work with them?
Sure. Yeah. So 95% of the residents pay their rent on time. People fall behind. We have resource books of places that help them help people when they fall behind on rent, right? Get caught up. And so they can go do that. If it's job related, we partner with other organizations that do what they do best. For a variety of things in the community center. We don't have a mental health caseworker, but there's a mental health caseworker here that's employed by another organization, right? So we have partnerships with employment organizations for people that typically need resume and work experience help. And we can call them, they'll come over here, meet with the resident and help them find a job if that's the issue. And then other organizations that we collaborate with might help them with a month of rent or something to get them caught up. So it's typically not a problem if you're willing to caught up, and you can get up to 3 months behind. And we've only had one person have to leave because they didn't call any of the places, they didn't go to any of the interviews that we helped them get and things like that. But that's not typical.
Right. Very not typical.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, before we keep going with the questions, I wanted to just point out and appreciate the fact that with the rent question, how you apply the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated. We don't, people that are not experiencing, homelessness or live in affordable housing, we don't experience this sliding scale payment.
Right.
If we don't experience that, why do we want somebody else to do it? And I feel like that's such an important concept to point out, how most, if not everyone, of the different organizations that have been presenting to us through this webinar, there's such an important intrinsic concept of the golden rule in their projects. And how is it that as we feel how those people are feeling, as we put ourselves in their shoes, we're able to help them in the best possible way, because we need to see other people's experiences, and that's really valuable. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Thank you. We did have a question about her dogs. That looked like there were 2 dogs, but then we didn't see them in the video at the end. Do you have pet restrictions or?
No. So, well, we do have pet restrictions. She has 2 dogs, but typically you can have 1 dog or 2 cats. We have a pet committee. We interview you after you fill out an application a couple times, and then we interview your pet, right? We ask you to bring your pet in if you have one. It needs to be vaccinated. If you don't have vaccinations or can't afford it, we have partnerships. We just tell you where to go, and you just say, I'm with Eden Village, and all that gets taken care of so that we can move you and your animal in. We allowed her to have 2 dogs, but we had our documentary crew there, and a local news station was there. So when our documentary guy was filming that, there was another news camera that he was having to run around to stay off, to keep that camera off. And so we left the dogs in the community center so that we could get decent film. But yeah, she still has her 2 dogs. So we allow pets. Pets are huge if you can take care of them for emotional support and different things like that. We actually have an Eden Village working dog that's a mental health therapy dog, but also is dual certified in drug sniffing, because we ask that our property be crime and drug free. And so we're all about dogs and pets here.
Okay, thank you. That was one of the questions. So how do you incorporate volunteers? I mean, if your houses come kind of pre-made, like
Mhm.
how do you incorporate volunteers and
Yeah.
volunteer hours?
On any given month, we have over 600 volunteers on the 2 properties here in Springfield that we own and operate. And a huge part of volunteering, over almost half of our volunteers, 40%, are on residents' home teams. And every resident has the option of having a home team. We've only had one person over the years refuse that. And what a home team is a group of individuals like you and I in the community that say, hey, maybe coming out of struggle and survival mode, you're free to hope and dream again. You're still, no one's denying that you're in absolute poverty, but that doesn't mean that you can't hope and dream. And so we say to a resident, if you'll let me, I'd like to introduce you to 4 to 6 of my friends. Those 4 to 6 friends go through a 45-minute training about not telling people what to do, but helping people accomplish their hopes and dreams. And this home team isn't an ATM machine or your instant money. They leverage their social capital on your behalf when you tell them what your hope and dream is. And so we've had a couple people go back to school. They filled out the grant and had to file taxes and do all this stuff that they could have never done without 4 to 6 people on their team. Those people agree to meet with them at least once a month as a group and get to know each other and build relationships, right? So a lot of our volunteer stuff is really relational, but it's also groups coming in and doing community meals, bingo, movie nights, AA, NA, counseling, all different things like that. People come and they volunteer to use their gifts to help other people. Gardening, landscaping, maintenance around the property. We've had a guy come for 4 years every Wednesday and help our maintenance guy, right? And so we have usually about 40 service learning students or interns any given semester with the local universities that volunteer here. And we think that anything that you're going to school for should be able to be applied within the context of community, right? And so there's got to be a way that we could apply that. Architect students design things for our campground, even designed and built one of the homes here. People go to school for anthropology, urban development, all kinds of things, and they come here and volunteer and learn.
Thank you. Thank you. I really love the concept of your home teams. It's taking the missional component of community first, where they live in the village, but it's amplifying it, the networks that we all have, and the resources and networks, as you say, that social capital that we can bring to help support.
You're really able to cast a wider net because it's a big ask to live missionally in a community where to spend an hour or 2 a month with somebody, getting to know them. And what happens is if you're on a home team, you might be helping a resident, or their hope and dream might be that they want to go to the museum or the aquarium or whatever it is. But your life is really the one that gets changed. So we talked a lot about mission and vision, but what nonprofits often don't have is they don't know, based on the direction they're heading, what they want their legacy to be, right? And we want our legacy to be that we change people's perceptions of homelessness by housing homeless people, but by bringing the community in and introducing people that lived differently and grew up differently together, and they find out that they have a hell of a lot of in common, right? And so to change people's perceptions will change how people interact with people that are still homeless, and people will step up, based on the walls that we're able to break down by putting someone in a house, and they'll be more compassionate out in the world.
Yeah, thank you. That's so well said. you had said that you go into places and you don't change zoning laws. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so we think that a better and more efficient way to develop a neighborhood like this is to research the zoning, which is hard, which is why people bring Eden Villages to their communities, because we help them do that, and to figure out where you could. So in the nonprofit world, we're typically dreamers, right? And so somebody comes to us and they're like, I got this field over here. It's got this oak tree and this creek. And we're like, man, that's it. You're going to give it to me. God must be giving it to me. This is going to happen. And then it's zoned agriculture. And then they're like, man, the neighbors love what I do. Who wouldn't love what I do, right? And so then they go try to rezone it. And then there's this neighborhood meeting and people come in and they cuss you out and spit on you and threaten you and all this stuff. And then we think the politicians will like it. And they get worried about the amount of neighbors that oppose this. And it doesn't happen. It takes us 5 to 10 years to build anything and all this stuff. And so instead of that, we say, hey, let's find out what the zoning says we can do. And let's figure out a way to build our same floor plan, whether it's 2 units attached by a 1-hour firewall, or build it as a modular home, or if it's a mobile home park, we could build it as a mobile home or park model RV. How can we build this home in a variety of ways in the same factory, and get it certified in different ways? And then instead of looking at property that's for sale, we look at property that's zoned right, whether it's for sale or not, and then approach people and ask them if they would like to sell it, right? Because we're skirting the not in my backyard movement, because a not in my backyard movement starts a great project in a negative light and with a lot of stress, and people, we're been doing this too long and I'm too old for some neighbor to come and tell me that what we're doing isn't right. Eden Village has increased the property values in the neighborhoods that it's in above the typical rate of property value increase in our city, right? It's impossible to dump $3 or $4 million on 4 acres and lower somebody's property value. But that's what the not in my backyard movement would tell you. Eden Village, the Springfield Police Department will tell you, is the most secure neighborhood in the city of Springfield. To enter, if you live here, it's biometric access. It's your left thumbprint, right? 16 security cameras, not to keep our residents from the outside world, but to keep the bad guys that prey on vulnerable people from coming on our property. And so it lowered the crime rate in the neighborhoods that we're in. But the Not in My Backyard movement would tell you that properties like this increase crime and decrease property values. And that's not real. We've proven otherwise. And you can't deal with people that don't deal in reality. And so we make a conscious choice to deal with what the zoning book says, which is reality, instead of dealing with what the neighbors say, which isn't real.
Gotcha. So by going directly to where what you want to build is doable, you bypass all of the chaos, all of the emotional upheaval, and you have a big green light to build whatever.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really inventive and creative and process, and it jumpstarts it. You know, go over all of those other hurdles that sometimes hold others back.
Yeah.
And make it quick. What are some of the supportive services that you offer? You mentioned the person who can come in and help with the resume. You mentioned someone who has some mental health training, AA, NA. What are some of the?
Yeah. So to be very, very clear, we offer those through partnerships with other organizations, right? And so we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to fill a needed gap in our city, but recognize that other organizations did great things. So we didn't want to increase our staffing and increase our model expenses and operational budget by creating a duplication of the great things another organization does. So we looked at what we would need, what we thought people would want in a community center, in a community, so that they didn't have to get on public transportation. If we could bring that service there, what would it be? Then we went to those organizations and told them what we were doing, and told them that we would love for them to either office here or do events here and things like that. And so it's a variety of organizations that come here and do what they do best for the residents. And so we partner with a mental health medical system, and they employ a mental health caseworker on every property to work full time, as long as they can get residents to sign up, right? We don't charge them rent. We give them a secure office with telemed, and they could get online with somebody and telemed in to psychiatrists and psychologists and different things like that. And they really work as a life coach, but we're not involved in that. We just provide them a space to come do what they do best. We work with the National Alliance for Mental Illness. They do peer support, grief counseling, and different things like that here. We work with art therapy, people going to school for occupational therapy, nursing students, that we have a medical first aid room here, and nursing students will do clinics here. Really anything that you can think of probably comes here. NAAA, biblical-based addiction recovery, Bible studies, yoga, workout classes, just all kinds of different things could happen here on any given week.
Thank you. You brought up the Bible. Is there a Christian focus to this? Like, how do you help your neighbors there that have other faiths besides a Christian?
Sure. Yeah, so we're driven out of our faith, Eden Village. God settled man in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and care for it. We're definitely, that's our drive. That's who we are. That's our inspiration. We make no apologies for that, but we're certainly inclusive. We don't have a church service here. Other groups come and do Bible studies. You can come if you want. People of other faiths come and they serve here. This is a place for everybody. Our residents believe a variety of different things, but we're really kind of working under a quote that they attribute to St. Francis that he didn't really say. And it says, preach the gospel always, when necessary, use words. And so we're loving people to the point of, for us, no other explanation outside of our faith, right? But we're certainly not proselytizing or shoving our faith down people's throats. And they're free to do what and believe and practice whatever they want. That has no implication on how they believe, what color their skin is, how they identify. None of that has anything to do with our application process, or whether you're moving in or not. We're loving everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great quote. Do you know who said it?
No one really knows who really said it. They just always attribute it to St. Francis.
Okay, that is a great quote. So what is your average length of stay? I know you say that most of people stay there until they pass away in their beautiful homes. Do you have an?
Yeah, right now I think the average is about 600 nights, so probably almost 2 years. Some people have been here since day one, and some people have, I think since we opened, about 40 residents have left Eden Village. 8 of those have passed away. I think only 4 people have left in a way where they didn't have housing when they left. Right. I chose to leave and back on the streets, and 3 of those people stay at the campground every night. The majority, I think it's a 93% retention rate of people staying housed after they moved in here.
Okay, that's great. That's a really lovely statistic. So let's see. I'm making sure I'm catching everybody's questions. Oh, there is one here I've missed. So it says in large cities, the places people can rent are very high. Oh, disappeared. As I
I'm
was
sorry, I'm
looking.
sorry, I'm sorry. I clicked on that. So it says, in many large cities, the places people can rent at very high rates are much smaller than your units. How do you respond to this?
Yeah. Yeah, our units are 400 square feet. They're 15 by 26, and then they have an additional 6-foot porch. So yeah, in large cities, you could rent something. I mean, an efficiency loft in Manhattan would be smaller than that and super expensive, right? But we're operating off of donations, and so we're not trying to rent things at market rate. It costs us more to operate than the resident would pay in rent, right? So this isn't a sustainable model in the terms that we're now talking about nonprofits needing to be sustainable. And so we don't believe that nonprofits should be sustainable outside of the generosity and compassion of our community and donors. And so typically when people ask us what our sustainability plan is, we tell them typically that person is a high net worth individual that is really asking you how long they have to be generous before they can sleep at night and not be generous. And we tell them you're called to a lifestyle of generosity, whether you give to us or somewhere else. But our sustainability model is you and the way that you've been blessed and the resources that you have giving back to the poorest people in our community. It costs us $550 per month per home to operate in Eden Village. The residents pay $325. There's still an operational gap. That's utilities included, which that gap can change based on natural gas tariffs and electricity rates and things like that. We try to mediate that to some degree using a lot of solar and different things like that to control our costs and do our best to control our costs. But people have to continue to donate for us to operate. And so the size of the city and the cost of fair market housing doesn't really affect our model as much as a typical model might, because we're not trying to get anybody up to market rate. We're relying on generosity and grants and foundations.
Yeah, thank you. That was a fabulous answer. I love when you said our sustainability model is you, our donors and our supporters. That's really beautiful. And actually that does lead me to my next question. Kind of how large of a staff does it take to, because you've got two that are right there in Missouri, in Springfield, right?
Yeah, we have a lot of support staff in Springfield that are working with other cities and planning stuff like this, what we're doing today, and different things. But our second village, which is the better example, has a community coordinator. So someone that coordinates volunteer activities, collects rent, and does, and then a maintenance person that works with them to do maintenance checks and different things like that. And so it's typically 2 people for a village, but our villages are very, very designed to be relatively maintenance free, hardy board siding, metal roofs, warranties on appliances, everything's brand new, right? And then they're smaller, right? They're 50 units or less. One here is 31. One is 24. We're building some around the country as large as 50. We would never build anything larger than 50 because of the relational model that we have. And then we rely on volunteers, like we do volunteer work days, the 3rd Saturday of every month. And we try to accomplish things that we haven't been able to accomplish throughout the month because of our low staff, high volunteer model. But we're also able to pay our staff in a way that allows for employee retention, because sometimes we have a larger staff And everyone on our staff would then struggle paycheck to paycheck. And
Right.
so we wanted to explore a model where people could give their life away for our cause and pay their bills at the same time.
Right, right. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah,
Mhm.
answered that question really, really well. Um, I know very few people who have been living on the streets have cars. Do you have a place where cars get parked? I didn't see it in the video.
We do, yes. We have a parking lot, and so it's on the public side of the gate. And so if you had a car, you couldn't pull up to your home. You would pull up in the parking lot that's covered by cameras and everything like that. And then we have carts that you could unload your groceries in a cart and take them. The streets inside the gates of the community really become sidewalks, right? And then they're there for maintenance and emergency vehicles. And so that way, no uninvited guests can come in, right? And so you can have guests, but they need to be invited. And you can't sneak people in where we can't see who's on the property. And so, so there's parking lots. Yeah, very few residents drive at the village that I office at. After COVID, and we started housing people in the second village, a higher percentage of them were living in their cars.
Thank you. So have we hit all the questions? I wanted to make sure.
So now I think we have, and thank you for everyone that has been asking all these questions. Nate, we got about 3-4 minutes left of this episode, and we're truly grateful for everything that you have shared with us and whatnot. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about how easy is it to replicate what you're doing? Do you offer trainings or, people visit or something like that so they can learn more about your project and how to replicate it in their own communities?
Yeah, so we do conferences about every quarter, about 4 times a year, where different communities can come, and we spend the first day touring our properties, and different speakers are speaking about different things on the properties. And then the second day is completely in an event center where we're talking, and a lot of our community partners, the people that come in and do services, are talking about what they do at Eden Village. And so it gives people a big picture kind of, and more of the details of what they would need to make a good decision on if they wanted to bring a model like Eden Village to their community. And then people call and Zoom in, and we talk to people from all over the country each and every week. They can email us at edenvillageinfo@gmail.com. And they will connect you with me for a phone call or Zoom call to answer any additional questions anyone has. It's not something we expected to do in the beginning, but we feel like it's a lot of people have inquired, hundreds of communities over the last couple years since we started building. And so we want to help anybody that wants to bring the model to their community.
Amazing. Yeah. And we noticed that like other organizations that we have been featuring in the webinar have worked together or have started, conversations between each other to be inspired and create their own projects. So it's really cool that you're able to do that as well. Susan, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask about, you talked about grants and people donating individually. Do you get some state and city or federal money, or is this all really local?
We typically don't here in Springfield by choice, but some of our other communities do. Yeah, so it's we think that for us, this is a community problem that demands a community response. But our city and our states and our government are part of our community too. And so, so yeah, it could be either way. We typically don't apply for those funds here. A lot of our partners that are coming in here and doing services are applying for those funds. And so we wouldn't want to take from that pool of money that we need their service in that they're getting a grant for. And so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But we have a couple times. Yeah.
Okay.
That's great. I think that we are at the end of this webinar episode, Nate. We're truly grateful for your presentation, for the inspiration. for the details and the information that you were able to provide to our audience. Just as a reminder to everybody else, this will be in our YouTube channel, like in a couple minutes after this. We'll try to upload it very soon. We do have a review in our blog that will be coming out in the next couple of days, and this will be premiered on Facebook as well on Friday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Again, thank you for being here. Truly grateful for everything that you were able to share with us during this episode. And just to remind everyone, we have María Fernanda with Techo from Mexico sharing with us next Tuesday as we are coming to a close of this webinar series.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
Nate.
Yeah. Thanks for
Thank you,
having us.
everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. I will see you next week.
Uh-huh.
Bye-bye.